Welcome to another episode of Tiny Grimes Review Solforge Set 4. Today we are going to be looking at Uterra. Uterra has a few exciting new options at their disposal. The most interesting is Wagyu. Wagyu is essentially a plant that comes in as a defender, completely 100% useless, but as you gain life, it grows exponentially. The level 1 version can actually win games because you can play stuff like Stag, Druid's Chant on turn 2, grow it by 13, and if they don't have an answer, it can run away with a game. And level 2 can win on any rank. You pull the level 2 on rank 5 and grow it a couple times, you probably win with this card. So what makes this card so interesting is that sort of the missing piece for life gain decks. Life gain decks are really fun, interesting decks. In the past, they've relied on Arborist, who is not that reliable of a card. Once you get under 100, you essentially lose if you go all in on Arborist. Wagyu does not care if you're over 100 or not. It's nice to be over 100 because you're usually running something else, maybe Dissian Sludge, because that's really powerful. But if you get under 100, you really don't care. I've had and witnessed really incredible games where you just get dominated for 2 entire player levels. On player level 3, you go something like Wagyu 2 Howl. He becomes a 24-24, and then next turn you play like Howl Stag 2, and then you just win. So Wagyu is a really powerful, spiky card that is actually pretty manageable if you can stop it early. The problem with the card as I see it is that it falls into this weird nebulous region of it's not way overpowered in that you just can't beat it. If someone plays Wagyu, you might as well resign. As long as you've built a good deck, you should be able to handle it because you have cards in your deck to beat it. The problem is it gives you a very short window to find those cards because it has breakthrough. If you don't find the answers instantly, you've essentially lost. All of the decks I've been playing now have been built to beat this one card, and while it's okay to have a top card in the meta, there always will be, this card just feels too oppressive and too fast for my taste. I would love to see this card be reworked slightly. I love the idea of the card. My initial thought is if we stripped breakthrough from it, it would still be a very strong card that would grow quickly, but then you would have to do some work to make it get full value. You'd have to, play one of the many cards that can give it breakthrough, or play a jetpack, or do something to make it so that it can actually be harnessed fully. The way it is now, the problem is you can't really block it. So it gets large, and you can't just chump block it. It kills you. If you could chump block it because it didn't have breakthrough, then you would be able to sort of slowly whittle it down. You'd spend a lot of actions. The Uterra player would get a big advantage on you because you're spending all your actions killing their Wagyu where they're doing other things. But essentially, I would love to see a rework on the card. It's a fun card. It's a cool card. I like it a lot. But it's a little bit too spiky and too quick. So if we could fix it, I think it would be a really great card. Lash of Damara, admittedly, is a card I have not played yet. I've had a couple people play it against me. I thought that poison was going to be a thing after this set because there are a number of really good poison cards. But so far, I haven't tried it. And what that means is I don't think poison is really a thing because the way I work is if it looks good, I'm trying it. I will get around to it, but it just feels like poison is still missing that whatever it is, some little piece to get it over the top. Whether it's a dissolve that hits multiple targets earlier, I'm not entirely sure what it's missing, but it just doesn't seem to be quite there yet. However, this card is really strong. If you're going to be playing poison decks, this is the card you're going to be playing. Giving everyone poison, playing the card that comes in, grows off poison, playing dissolve. There are a number of ways to interact with this card. I have a feeling that down the road, this card is going to be really strong because I really feel like poison is like one card away from shifting from not all that playable to really dominantly good. And that's really, I think, the struggle Stoneblade is having is like, how do we balance poison? Because if it crosses over into the too good, it's going to be completely oppressive and completely destroy the metagame. So I like where Poison is right now, where it's pretty good, but it's not amazing. That's where I hope that we can keep Poison. All right, Suer Hermit is an interesting card. I really like the design of this card. He's a card that basically gives you options. If you play 3 copies of this guy, it's much easier to play one-ofs in your deck, because even if you see them at the wrong time, you go back in your discard pile, you put them in your hand, and you still get to play them. Now, he would be broken if he gave you an extra action also, so that you could go get it, play it, and play the other cards in your hand. He doesn't do that. So, with that being said, he's a much harder card to use than he looks at first glance. At first glance, he seems amazing, but at second glance, you realize what you're doing is playing a guy that has an okay body, but not something amazing, and then you have to get an on-leveled card. So what you end up doing is having, if you don't level him, when you play him, you're just getting that level 1 card out of your discard pile. So he's powerful, but I really think he needs to be, not needs to, but I think there's going to be a deck that comes about that really showcases this card. And not the way I've been using him is just kind of like, well, here's a guy that I can play like a one-of Tangle or a one-of Botanimate, and I can go grab something with him, and that can be useful. But I think he's going to be even better with a cycle of cards that they're free when you play them in addition to each other. So you do stuff like Venom Strike or Necroflay. This is where I think we're going to have him be really, really strong. And so we're going to have to see where he comes about. I really like his design, though. If his body was bigger, it would probably be a problem. I think he's a very well-designed card that is going to be the fundamental piece in multiple decks as we sort of figure out exactly the best way to use him. And it might not even be with this set. This may be a card that, for now, sort of languishes in the, he's okay, I'm trying to find a good use to him, for him to, set 5 or set 6, we get a deck together where he's just the main piece, and every time you play him, every time you see him, you play him because he's amazing. Okay. Kataru Sprite. This is another really well-designed, interesting card that every time you replace this card, it appears again. So it's a great way to trigger your replace mechanics. The problem is, it's not a very big body. And so what are you getting? You took an action to play a 3/7 so that you could replace it, when what you could have done is played something like a Lotus and gotten a bunch of guys and replaced one of them. So it really depends on how much of the upgrade mechanic you're doing, what exactly you're doing with this card. A really interesting option you have is to go something like Sprite, Patriarch, block with a Sprite, it comes near death, you replace it with an upgrade card who comes in, becomes whatever function it gets, Sprite reappears, you Patriarch it next turn, and you continue the cycle. While I think this could be good, and especially if we get some sick upgrade cards, this card will be amazing. Right now, I haven't found this to be that great of a card, because really you're having to put this in your deck, you're having to play it. I'd rather put other cards in my deck, I'd rather play other cards. So, of course, this is just for draft. This is just for constructed. Draft, I could see this being a much more annoying card. Any card that can't really easily be gotten rid of is very difficult in draft to deal with. But in constructed, it's a tiny body that doesn't die all that easily. That's okay. I'll usually pass on that for now. Big Bad Bartok. Love this guy. Now, I'm not sticking this guy in regular decks, but consistent 8/8. So you want to play big dumb animals, you say, huh? You want to play a deck that's super aggro. Here's your guy. You're guaranteed to see 3 8/8s on player level 1, and you're guaranteed to see 3 9/9s player level 2. That's really good. Now, his player level 3, of course, is disgustingly awful. But 1 and 2, 2 is not amazing, but to have it be consistent in an aggro deck is pretty good. So I really like this guy. I've tried him in an aggro deck. I'm not sure aggro decks are where it's at right now, but when they are good, he's going to be great. I don't think his moment is now, but I'm telling you, he's going to be good at some point. Whispers of Dendris is a really interesting card. It's like a Roar that loses what makes Roar great at level 3 with a breakthrough, but you don't ever have to level it. You can just wait until that moment appears. Maybe it's not till level 3, and then bam, all your guys are +6/+6. Especially if you're in draft, where you're going to like player level 5 or something, all your guys are +10/+10. This card's pretty good. I haven't actually used it in a deck yet, but that's not a reflection of the card and more a reflection of the current depth of the card pool. And I just haven't found a spot for it. But I do think it's a good card. And as you've heard me say over and over, these cards are really well designed. Not many of them are broken auto-includes in every deck. They're just well-designed, interesting cards. This is the card that theoretically should make the poison deck tick. And when I make my poison deck, this will be a 3 of course. Being able to drop in and get a huge boost for cards that are poisoned. So you're going to get something like your Lash of Damara. Let's say they have 4 guys on the board. Now they all have poison 2. You drop in your Venom Drinker. That's really strong, especially on player level 1. You would end up getting a 12/12 card on player level 1, a 20/20 on player level 2. That's really, really strong. The problem is you have to be all in on poison to make this work, and I'm not sure that poison has enough of a payoff yet to make you want to be all in on poison. That to me is where the struggle has come in. And I think there's a poison deck out there that's at least tier 1.5. I'm not sure there's a top tier poison deck yet. I know they're lurking, and like I said earlier, when they come, it's going to be annoying. You're all going to regret wanting poison decks to be good. Alright, apparently I've been alerted to the fact that Whispers of Dendris, I just decided it was +2/+2 for your rank. It's obviously not. It's +1/+1. But still, an interesting card you don't have to level to still get use out of. But it's probably worse than Roar, depending on how late you think the game is going. Tusken Grovekeeper is another interesting deck. I thought initially, I said deck card. I thought initially that this card was going to be a critical piece in life gain decks. And I still think it is if you're playing like an Arborist version. But why would you play an Arborist version when you can just play a Wagyu version? A Wagyu version doesn't care about being over 100, so this guy's kind of a waste at that point. An Arborist version that really needs to be over 100, this guy's great for clogging lanes. You play like your Stag, that ends up clogging 2 lanes. Then you play, say, a Spirit Bloom Dryad, that's another 2 lanes. You're able to clog all the lanes very quickly. It's really hard for your opponent to push through damage, and you could combo this guy with, say, Nuwada, and really do some interesting things where you're able to turn those seedlings into big bodies. Maybe you're playing something like Patriarch. Maybe you're playing Brood Queen and you need stuff to sacrifice. I think this card is pretty good. The stats on it are decent. I like this card quite a bit. I just feel like the metagame doesn't have a spot for it right now, but I think it's a well-designed, good card. I like it quite a bit. Spirit Stone Dryad is another interesting card. It's basically Kataru with a slightly different function. Like, on one hand, it's more powerful because you get 2 bodies out of the upgrade or the replacement, but you have to have the open lanes to make it happen. So I think from that perspective, it's like Kataru, only worse. The only time this would be better is if you have all these open lanes, and if you have tons of open lanes, maybe you're not doing that well, and the bodies you're getting aren't that great anyway. So I would have to say I probably wouldn't be playing this card, but never know. Maybe this card will work out in some deck. I haven't seen it yet. Venom Strike is another fundamental piece of a poison deck. I haven't seen anyone do this yet, but I'm wondering if the way to play poison right now is to pair with Alolan draw mechanics and go like Gox, Energy Surge, that kind of stuff, to where you're getting piles and piles of cards, and then you're able to see them all, and then even if you can't play them, you play Hermit, so that you're able to maybe go get the extra copies. I'm not really sure what the answer is, but if you can find a way to play multiple Venom Strikes, this card is amazing. And then you copy it, couple it with the Venom Drinker to make her huge, you can wipe their board and grow a giant guy really, really quick. I'll probably try that deck as my poison deck. I haven't seen people try it. I imagine they have, and it didn't work out very well, but I'll see for myself how well it works. Stag of Lists is interesting. Another really interesting design. Much better stats than Stag. Potentially more buff, but it depends what you want to do. Right? If you're running a Wagyu deck, you want the buff now. Because the point is you need to be able to get the Wagyu out of range of where they can kill it. And so this Stag doesn't work very well with Wagyu. You want to use the old one. But if you have a deck that's more just about staying over 100, perhaps this version is better because it's an actual threat on the board to do damage, and it pumps out continual health. So in the current meta, it seems like it's a card that's not going to see play, but I like the card. It's also more redundancy for life gain decks, and I like redundancy through creatures. So you can play this Stag, the other Stag, Spirit Bloom Dryad. All three of those cards will give you life on the turn they come out, provide a body. I think they're pretty interesting cards. Shardclaw Crusher. I don't know. This guy seems pretty terrible to me. His level 3 is bonkers good if you have a bunch of stuff you can upgrade. So like if in draft especially, if you got like Kataru and this guy together, that would be really, really tough to work with. But just on his own, in constructed, I don't see this guy being all that playable. I mean, a 12-12 on levels 2 is good, but there's other cards that are comparable that don't have to destroy a card to get there. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people can show me how good this can be in a token deck where you have plenty of guys that can sit around and then you can, overwrite them. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it yet. I can't really envision it yet, but we'll have to see what you guys think. All right. Roaming Warclaw. When he comes in, you get a little raptor. I mean, it's a token, right? His body's not bad. I can see this guy being great in draft. He's a good underdrop. Can trade stuff off, clog lanes. I think he's good in that regard. He's also probably not too bad with the dinosaur that buffs other dinosaurs. But are you playing this guy in constructed? I really don't think so. In a dinosaur deck, he probably does have a spot, but I don't know. I don't think he makes it in constructed. Lycian Rain is really interesting. It's basically a Druid's Chant that's far more flexible, but worse if you need instant healing to, say, trigger a Wagyu. If you're playing more of the get over 100 and stay there kind of deck, this is a really interesting card because you're able to heal guys up. So let's say you have your Arborist 2 out there and they've put a couple bodies into it to try to handle him, and you can potentially either heal yourself or heal him. I don't think this is going to see any play, but there's sort of a spot for it in a life gain deck. But I think most people would play Howl over this especially, and then even probably Druid's Chant as well, and you probably don't need 3 cards that directly heal you. Now what I do love about this is that there are 3 spells now that directly heal you. So I don't know what deck this could function in, but maybe we're going to get to a point where you're just like, you know what? I'm playing 30 heal cards. Bam. Every turn I'm healing like 15 to 20. If you want to beat me, you got to hit me for 350 damage this game. I don't know. Maybe that's viable. I don't think so, because you're giving up board presence to play this card, but I'd kind of like to see someone try that deck. I'd like to see what that deck looks like. Featherfang is a really boring constructed card, but draft looks pretty good actually. Levels well for trading. Okay. Well, that wraps up my take on Solforge Set 4 Uterra. Stay tuned for my other faction reviews from Set 4, and take a look at the link below for the other faction reviews. So I will see you next time.